What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the last total takedown of 2022. That's right, we're wrapping it up this week. This is Pub Sports Radio. The Lions on the Shore, brought to you by Superbook Sports. We're talking UFC Vegas 66 from a totals perspective. If you want to check out the full breakdown video, check out below. We'll put a link in there for you so it's easy to access. Let's jump straight on into this bad boy. We've got the night starting with Journey Newsom taking on Sergey Morozov. Total set at 2.5. We've got an over 2.5 minus 145. The under 2.5 is plus 125. And I kind of leaned with the over at first, but the more I think about it, the more I kind of actually like an under here. Now, the easy answer is Sergey Morozov wins by grind, right? We expect to see that a lot of the time. But we've also seen Sergey Morozov get outpaced, get tired, and then get tapped out by his opposition. Journey Newsom is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. We have seen Journey Newsom clubbed and hurt many times in the octagon, 2 times even being finished in that very first round. Sergey Morozov is getting a big step down in competition here, and he does have decent striking. He does have decent power. I think he can put away Journey Newsom. Both guys can be finished. Both guys have that finishing upside. Kind of talked myself into an under 2.5 here. I don't mind the violence. Manel Kape taking on David Dvorak. Another 2.5 here in this spot. The over is minus 135. The under is plus 115. And I kind of like the over. Now, Manel Kape is a guy that I said probably wins by knockout on my breakdown. And I know that sounds weird. I like the over 2.5, but I kind of like the knockout. It's because of the price tags, everybody. It's because of the price tags. Manel Kape at minus 250 is just way too expensive. We've seen Dvorak wobble. We saw him knocked down in his last fight. Kape may be the guy that can get him with a flying knee and put the nail in the coffin there, but if he doesn't land that perfect shot, what we see from both of these guys is measured, low-paced output, and that lends itself to an over. So I'm going to say over 2.5 at minus 135. Rinat Fakhretdinov taking on Bryan Battle, another 2.5. Over is minus 140. Under is plus 120. Bryan Battle showed off he's got some knockout power in his last fight. However, most of the time, he's kind of an outside kicking point fighter. His opponent, Rinat Fakhretdinov, really desperate for the takedowns. Grinds that body lock, knees the crap out of your thighs. He will grind. He absolutely will grind. And this fight, to me, comes down to how Bryan Battle responds to that grinding offense of Rinat Fakhretdinov. If he can keep his distance, if he can keep the pace, there's going to be a lot of those middle transitions where he's escaping takedowns or he's on his back or he's against the cage. Those are going to grind that clock away. I think if there's a finish, it probably comes from Bryan Battle and not the other side of this thing. So I think I'm going to go with the over 2.5 again at minus 140 for this one. We've got Michał taking on Rafa Garcia, total set at 2.5. The over is minus 170. The under is plus 150. Very similarly to the last fight, I think the finish is only coming from one side, and that's from Michał. Rafa Garcia is not a guy who tends to finish his opponents unless he can absolutely drain you and get that gas tank out of the picture. He will get your back. He will submit you if he has that chance. But I don't think Mahashat's the guy that's going to give up and go away that easily. Even if he does get grinded on, even if he does get taken down multiple times, I don't know that he's just going to roll over and give up a neck. I do think if Rafa wins, it probably goes over. Mahashat's the one guy in this fight that can finish. However, Rafa Garcia is legendarily durable. So if he did get the finish, it would be shocking for more than one reason. I think we're going over 2.5 again. Anti-violence today, folks. Minus 170 for the over 2.5 is my look. Saidukub Kakramanov taking on Said Nurmagomedov. What a fight this is going to be. I mean, 2 Russian grinding styles. Both of them, and I'm sorry, 1 Russian grinding style, both of them grinding styles. 2.5 is minus 170 for the over, plus 150 for the under. Saidukub talked in his last fight about how he would have gotten the finish if he had had a full training camp. Well, the boy's going to get his opportunity here on this one. He's fully prepared coming into this fight, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to take everything he's got to outgrind a Nurmagomedov. So I do think this is going over minus 170 to the over 2.5. I like that one too. Matt Semmelsberger taking on Jake Matthews, another 2.5. You guys are going to get sick of hearing me say that today. Over 2.5, minus 140, under 2.5, plus 125. This one I do think has some finishing upside. Matt Semmelsberger has got near that death touch. We've talked about the power this guy brings to the table. Jake Matthews has power himself, very slick boxing, high-level BJJ player. We have seen Matt Semmelsberger get tired and slow down. So both of those things, we have both guys that are potentially finishers. But dang, for some reason, my gut is just telling me to stay away from this one. I'm going to say under 2.5 at plus 125. But at this point, I don't know that I'm going to have a bet on that fight, or especially on that total. Cory McKenna taking on Cheyanne buys. Over 2.5 is minus 320. Under 2.5 is plus 265. This one is an over dead nuts in my opinion. Cheyanne buys is the only one who's finishing this fight. Cory McKenna is going to have to rely on draining those minutes away if she's going to get the win here. And Cheyanne buys can either win on the ground with a submission of some kind, with her ground and pound of some kind. She can also win this fight outside striking if she can keep Cory McKenna at distance. So if anybody's finishing, I'm expecting it to be Cheyanne buys, not Cory McKenna. And I think Cory McKenna is tough enough to use that grappling, extend the minutes, stay in this fight, and get us to an over. I'll say over minus 320, although I hate that number and that's not at all fun to play. Cody Brundage taking on Michał Lord Oleksiejczuk, a 1.5 here for this bad boy. We finally got a 1.5 to talk about. The over 1.5 is plus 110. The under 1.5 is minus 130. And I agree with that under 1.5. I like me some violence in this fight. The way Oleksiejczuk starts his fights, there's just no slowing down. Once he comes forward and starts that pace, you're not getting away from him. It's kill or be killed from that moment on. Cody Brundage has shown that he can thrive in that exact circumstance. Michał Oleksiejczuk has shown that if he does get tired, he is essentially helpless after the point where he exhausts himself. So Cody Brundage can use the grappling, go to the ground game, ground and pound. We've got Oleksiejczuk on the feet with a speed advantage. Both guys throw with heavy hands. I like under. Give me violence. Bobby Green taking on Drew Dober. Another 2.5 for us. We're back to our classic standard here. Over 2.5, minus 160. The under 2.5, plus 140. And again, I think if the finish is happening, it's the Drew Dober side of things. I mean, that chin cannot be cracked. And Bobby Green is a guy that just simply doesn't knock anybody out. So Drew Dober cracks Bobby Green or not, that's the end of the story. I'm expecting this to be a competitive kickboxing match. Volume versus power. Maybe a couple takedowns mixed in here and there just to change up the pace a bit. But probably going a full 15 minutes. I'll say over 2.5, minus 160. Juicy J, Julian Erosa taking on Alex Bruce, Leroy Caceres. Another really weird matchup, one I did not expect to ever see in my day. Total set at 2.5. The over is minus 140. The under is plus 120. And I do think the over in this fight again has some kind of merit. Now, Juicy J is the king of the club and sub. We've seen Alex Caceres get subbed on the mat before, but we have also seen Alex Caceres have an absolute brick for a head. Tank massive shots that no human should be able to and just keep coming forward. He's been working on his BJJ game. Julian Erosa has been a little chinny, but he also seems to be working on his defense. He went with Hakeem Dawodu in his last fight for a full 15 minutes, so we're seeing levels up from him as well, and I don't think Caceres hits as hard as Dawodu does, so I will say over 2.5 at minus 140. There's plenty of danger involved in that one. I'm not a big fan of it, so be careful, but I'll say over. We've got Alessandro Costa. There we go. I mixed those two names up a couple of different ways there for you. Alessandro Costa taking on Amir Albazi. Total set at 2.5. The over plus 130. The under minus 150. And I like under here again. Now this one kind of breaks the rule, right? Because usually I want the under to include both fighters on this one. Alessandro is a guy who is untested at this level. Barely made it through the Contender Series. I'm not expecting him to beat Amir Albazi. I'm expecting Amir Albazi to finish in this spot. So rather than play a total, I'd rather play Amir Albazi inside the distance at a slightly cheaper price tag. Now, I guess Alessandro could always come out and try and swing for the fences early in this fight and land something. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm saying under 2.5. I'm saying Amir Albazi inside the distance, and it is what it is. Damir Ismagulov taking on Arman Tsarukyan, another 2.5 total. The over is minus 250. The under is plus 220. This is definitely over because both these guys are not necessarily the biggest finishers in the world. They're both tough. They're both durable. This is going to be a high-level matchup. It's going to be scrambles and jab versus control time, positions, and range. Like, this is going to be an excellent fight to watch from a fan perspective, but it's also not going to be one where I'm expecting either guy to have such an edge that they can actually finish. I'll take the over 2.5, minus 250. Lots of decisions this weekend, folks. We saw a fight last week where it was all finishes and everybody getting knocked out and subbed. I think it's the opposite for the last fight of 2022. Main event time, Sean Strickland taking on Jared Cannonier. Total set at 4.5, and this one is super tricky to me. So Jared Cannonier does hit with an absolute ton of power. He can knock out Sean Strickland at pretty much any point in time during this fight, and that would lend itself to an under. Sean Strickland coming off a knockout loss. That would also lend itself to an under. The only problem is I think Sean Strickland and his jab is kind of the biggest story in this entire fight. If he just stays in front of Cannonier, uses that footwork, pumps that jab out into his face, I think he kind of stays safe somehow, even in the midst of being in the middle of the fire. We've seen Jared Cannonier get overwhelmed and outclassed by better strikers before, and it just kind of freezes him up and shuts him down. I don't know if he's going to have any idea what to do with Sean Strickland, especially if he lands one or two big bombs and Sean just doesn't go away. So I'm going to say over 4.5 at -110. I do lean on the Sean Strickland side. This total is almost binary because I'm not sure how Jared Cannonier wins a 25-minute striking affair with Sean Strickland without landing 3 knockdowns over the course of the fight. Maybe Jared Cannonier comes out and wrestles, in which case I actually think that kind of lends itself to an under because of Cannonier's ground and pound and Sean Strickland's jiu-jitsu game. So if Cannonier wins, I'm expecting a finish. If Sean Strickland wins, I'm expecting a decision. I will say over 4.5 at -110. That's the final total takedown, folks. We'll see you next year in 2022. But before that, I'll see you tomorrow for the Undefeated post-weigh-in show. Good luck on all your degenerate action, baby. Let's roll.